When it comes to hunting whitetail does, are there do's and don'ts and I don't knows? You bet there are. This is Deer and Deer Hunting TV.
This is day 3 of the 2022 Iowa shotgun season 1. Out here trying to harvest some does. We like to donate does to the local food shelter. It's also a good way of trying to control our numbers here up on our farm. So that's what we're up to today.
Actually, I think this one closest to us is the biggest. I think.
Yeah, she's not bad. Should we just take her?
Sure, I'm on her.
Okay. Go ahead and pull out this one. And there's a corner. That's not good. Okay.
Yep.
You got the far one? Don't tail up now.
Oh, I did.
There's the buck. I think the first one went down right away, did it not?
She ran down in the draw a little bit.
Okay.
Popping out at the top. I got it.
So she stops.
Yep. Buck's going after her.
She seized up on the front side. You can see her kind of hunch.
Yep. Well, that was quick work.
Yeah, no kidding. They kind of stacked themselves there. That's 2.
You know, one of the most interesting things about whitetails is the female society. I can't get enough about this because it is so fascinating what researchers have learned about the female society in whitetails. This is how it works. Basically what you have are 4 classes of females that make up that society, and they live in overlapping groups. So the first class we have, I would call kids. These are the young does, the fawns, and the yearlings, the 1.5-year-olds. These deer are basically just there for the ride. They're having fun, they're exploring, and they're learning their way. So the second group that we have are what I would call the young adults. These deer are normally the yearlings, but also some 2.5-year-olds. These are the ones that are the first-time mothers. They don't really know their place on the landscape yet, so they're still kind of learning their way. The third group is one of the most pivotal groups, and those are the dispersers. These deer normally are 2.5 and 3.5-year-old does. These does will be kicked off to other parts of the range by the fourth group, which is the matriarchs. The matriarchs are the older does. Now, in a normal landscape, a matriarch doe is going to be anywhere from 4.5 years old all the way up to 8.5 years old and beyond. And once you get to those older classes of matriarchs, it will split into 2 classes of matriarchs. One would be secondary matriarchs and the other one would be true matriarchs. True matriarchs are the herd's basically queens. They're the ones that control the rest of the herd, including the bucks. And that's where we get into things like social pressure among deer, which is pivotal on how deer live across the country.
Deer and Deer Hunting TV is brought to you by
One of the more interesting things that I found over the past 2 decades is that the age structures of whitetails has been really fractured across the country due to things like QDM and intensive doe harvesting. What happens is you've had, in a typical landscape where deer are not being hunted that hard, you would have really delineated classes of all these age classes, and you would have some deer in each one of them. But what we find, especially in these heavily hunted states that we talk about all the time, those age structures have been fractured such that hunters have been killing off all those older age class does, to where now you might have younger deer, say 2.5 and 3.5 and 4.5-year-old does, occupying matriarchal status when they really shouldn't be. This really can wreak havoc on deer management because it wreaks havoc on how deer are living there.
And on 3, 1, 2, 3.
So an age class I'd really like you to study on your property, if you really want to get to know more about this, are those dispersers. Those dispersers normally are going to be 2 and 3-year-old does. Now, they're not the matriarchs of that population, which means they are going to be dispersing to try to find what I often call the higher rent areas, the better habitat where they can have good fawning cover. These dispersers, however, they could be occupying places on the property that you hunt, and they're not going to be there next year. This is really no different than a dispersing buck. Now, we know that bucks will disperse normally twice by the time they're 2.5 or 3.5 years old. Chances are you'll never see them again once they disperse. The same thing with dispersing females. So those are the does that I'm going to target if I can, if I have an aggressive doe hunting strategy.
This is what you call a room with a view. Whew. Well, here we are, back on the hunt in Texas. We're out tonight looking to see if we can fill a doe tag. And of course, pigs and coyotes and everything are always going to stay on the agenda. Man, the window's so low. I can't get low enough in the scope to see through it comfortably, so I'm really stretching and my gun's not sitting at my shoulder properly. I better try an alien. It's still not steady enough. It's steady enough, but I like to be rock solid. And with my body contorted a bit, I got a slight shake, so I'd like it to be rock steady. I'm gonna try the pack.
Deer and Deer Hunting TV is brought to you by
I like to be rock solid, and with my body contorted a bit, I got a slight shake, so I'd like it to be rock steady. I'm gonna try the pack. there's our Texas doe. Hearing protection's a must when you're hunting out of these blinds, but a big old doe, big head on her. You can see her hip bone sticking out, so she's been around for a few years. Obviously lots of opportunity, but we again waited for that perfect shot. I watched those front legs, and I could see when she was turning there, I could still see that far leg was still way to the left. And I knew if I shot, I'd only get one lung and it'd probably come out the front of her brisket, even though she looked like she was broadside. So gave her the time and the respect to let her get turned into the proper position, watch those front legs line up. We knew she was broadside, and with that kick, I'm sure she didn't go too far. It was straight up, down, and into the bush. Here's the point of impact. You know, it sounds weird, but I always backtrack and backtrail my deer to find the point of origin, where it was standing, when it was hit. And sometimes you learn a lot about blood trailing and things by backtracking. So even though we got that deer, we can come back and look that there's long stretches here where there's no blood sign at all. But we had the general direction that it was heading. You can learn a lot by finding your deer, backtracking it to the point to where you shot it, and the things you see will help you when the trailing is really tough.
Well, there you have it. There's a Texas whitetail doe. This is a big, healthy doe for Texas. This is not the kind of deer you see in South Texas. This one's got some mass to it and good muscle definition. They've been eating well. It's all part of the herd management. You know, it's nice to shoot the bucks, but there's always more does than bucks, and it takes up place in the habitat, so it's part of management, and it's very good eats. So we're going to enjoy this deer, get it back and in the cooler. It's unseasonably warm here today, about 85 degrees, so meat care is essential, and we're going to be expedient about it.
Okay, so let's talk about quiver design for a minute. I prefer the types of quivers that have 2 points of contact to secure the arrow. It could be on the side of the quiver, or it could be right up and down. And I like the longer quivers. Why is this? Sound reduction. If you listen to your bow and you hear that noise, a lot of times it's coming from the quiver. Yes, bows will have rattles and creaks in other places, and the rest and the sight and other things. That I'm not worried about. That I can get pinpointed down, especially at the archery shop. But out there in the woods, if you hear a rattle, chances are it's coming from here. And a lot of times, it's just me not securing that arrow properly. So here we have an arrow, we're gonna put it in the quiver. Well, there's a couple points. There's a point up in the front, and there's a point there and there. Let's say that arrow is pushed back a little bit. Rattles like crazy, and the reason why is I didn't have that arrow seated up into the hood. We seat that arrow up into the hood, we make sure everything is down the way it's supposed to be. That's why this thing is designed the way it is. It's not rattling. And the other thing too is with putting the quiver on my bow, a lot of times when I get up, actually not a lot of times, every time when I get up in the tree, I like to hang my quiver. For me, it's easier that way. I'm only shooting one arrow at a time anyways. But when I'm walking or I'm getting in and out of my vehicle, I can get that quiver right on the bow, lock it down, locked and loaded, ready to go. Keep these things in mind if you're gonna select a new quiver. How the arrows go into the quiver, how they lock up into the hood, and especially how that quiver mounts on your bow. You're gonna save yourself some headaches and possibly a missed deer because of that noise. Okay, so you went out and got yourself a nice hard-sided blind. Now what? What are you gonna do? Stop right there. Do not run out there and just throw it up anywhere where you think, oh, this would be a great place where I could shoot a deer if I'm rifle hunting or bow hunting. Really think this over. Number one, are you gonna put it in the woods, near a swamp, or on that field edge? What I would highly recommend is cater it to all-season deer hunting. That means bow hunting and gun hunting. I would not, if you only have one blind, I would not put it in a rut spot. I would not put it in an early season spot like maybe overlooking a field edge. I want to be able to use that blind throughout the deer season because after all, they're really comfortable and they're very nice. More important than that is predominant deer activity. So do I have a nice funnel area? In this swamp here, we've got great funnels. We've got trails that are coming through this swamp at all times of the year. Ideal spot for a blind because I can sit all day and I know I have a really good chance of seeing deer all day. A couple other things you got to keep in mind, where are those deer coming from? I don't want to have that thing facing into the sun in the morning if this is a morning spot. Likewise in the evening spot. Plus I can get silhouetted really easily depending upon how that blind is situated. And finally, we have to look at predominant wind direction. That is actually probably number one on my list. I'm not gonna put a permanent blind in a spot that's gonna blow deer out of there. No matter how scent free I think I'm in that blind, the second I open a window, there's gonna be scent blowing. Okay, so if we've got a westerly wind and it's blowing down this way and that's where the bedding area is, don't wanna do that. So I wanna take the blind and I wanna have it maybe on the side or maybe kind of cross-cutting that wind somehow, because even if I'm not hunting there, the deer are gonna learn these blinds. They're gonna learn that you are in those blinds. So that brings me to my last point. Even though these blinds, like this bank's behind me, super nice blinds, comfortable, built for, you know, soundproof and also scent proof, the deer still are gonna smell me no matter what. When I'm getting up into that blind, I'm spreading scent. When I'm opening a window, I'm spreading scent. So I need to keep that in mind, even when I'm not hunting. Just always be on edge because these critters, they're wired 360 to try to evade us. Scent control, placement with the sun, and also placement where predominant deer activity is, and you're gonna have many, many hours of enjoyable hunting out of your hard-sighted blind.